my name is Marek Kiszkowy, and I come from Poland. At the moment, I'm not teaching. I'm doing a PhD in TEFL, and I also run a blog and a website, TEFL Equity Applicants. And yeah, I think that's enough of an introduction. And I want to talk today about empowerment, one of the topics of this conference. And I want to start with 3 simple questions. Who here in the audience would describe themselves as a non-native English speaker? If you can raise your hand up. Okay. And who would describe themselves as a native English speaker? All right. And who would say they are an English teacher? Who is an English teacher here? Okay. This is precisely the point that I like to make today. We're all English teachers. And if we want to empower ourselves, it can only be done together, as English teachers. Not as native and non-native speakers, but as English teachers. So, I have a very simple dream that I'd like to share with you today. It's a dream that soon these labels that seem to divide us will disappear, become irrelevant. That soon we'll be valued simply as English teachers, not as native and non-native speakers. So, my dream is very simple indeed. It's a dream that will be valued soon for what we do best, that is teach English. Not for an accident of birth. Because we are all English teachers. And what defines us is our professionalism. Our ability to teach the language that we all love. So, when I look around me today, what I see is English teachers. Not native and non-native speakers, simply English teachers. So I'd like you as well to take a good look around you today. We all come from different countries. We speak different languages. But there's one thing that unites us. We are English teachers. Can you all see that? And together as English teachers, we're stronger. Together, we have the power to change ELT. Together we are ELT, and we can be the driving force of change in the industry. And change is possible. It's actually taking place right now. This conference is a sign of change. The topics discussed here today are a sign of change. And I, you, we, all of us as English teachers, we can be that change. We can drive it. So, the story that I'd like to share with you today will hopefully show you that change is indeed possible, no matter how insurmountable the obstacles might seem. So, there was a time when I didn't used to think of myself as a non-native speaker. I thought of myself simply as an English teacher. Call it naivete, ignorance, innocence, but it was a happy time where you could think of yourself simply as an English teacher. Unfortunately, this changed in 2011. I applied for a job with International House Lisbon. And what I didn't know back then was that I was a non-native speaker. And non-native speakers were not welcome back then in IH Lisbon. So I received a reply, which said that my CV would not be considered because I was a non-native speaker. I was furious. My CV wouldn't be considered because I'm Polish.
This was utter nonsense to me. I was a qualified, experienced, and proficient English teacher. What else do you want? Well, clearly, International House Lisbon back then wasn't very much interested in qualified, experienced, and proficient English teachers. They simply wanted native speakers. So I was furious. But rather than smash the computer screen, or sulk, or even worse, give up, what I did was to vent my fury into an article. Mind you, I'd never written an article before. I didn't really have a clue what I was doing. But I couldn't just sit silently. I had to speak out. I didn't want IH Lisbon to get away with it. I wanted to go after them. So I entitled the article Nativity Scenes, and I sent it off to a couple of ELT newsletters and magazines. And to my surprise, English Language Gazette, EL Gazette, replied, saying they'd like to publish the article. With changes, of course, and there were quite a lot of them. Remember, I'd never written an article before. I was just a young English teacher from Poland, venting his fury into an article. But the article must have caused a bit of a stir, because the CEO of International House World wrote an official reply, which was published together with the article in the EL Gazette. And in that reply, the CEO promised that International House would change its recruitment policies to offer equal professional and employment opportunities to both native and non-native speaking teachers, which, as far as I'm aware, they actually did. So what does this story show you? Well, one thing that it might show you is that if you're a young English teacher from Poland venting his fury into an article, well, then even a giant like IH might have to give in. But jokes aside, what I think it does show you is that we, all of us as English teachers, we have the power to change ELT. Because as English teachers, we are ELT. But of course, change also takes time. It takes commitment. It takes grit. With IH and that article, it might have just been a stroke of luck. But if any of you here want to really change ELT, it will take time. But it is possible. 2 years ago, I started TEFL Equity Advocates, campaign
and employment opportunities for English teachers. And from the very beginning, my basic premise has been that we are all English teachers. Not native and non-native speakers, but English teachers. And we should be valued for that, for what we do best, for our professionalism, for our ability to teach English, not for a language that we unwittingly picked up as kids. And all the prejudices, the stereotypes, they make us weaker when we should be stronger. They divide us when we should be united. So I think equal employment and professional opportunities for all of us as English teachers is something we should all care about. Because the current ELT recruitment model disregards professionalism. It disregards us as English teachers. It is based on a false premise that your mother tongue, a language you're not even sure how you picked up as a kid, is the most important hiring criterion, is what makes or breaks a teacher. This needs to change, and is already changing now. However, one of the most frequent challenges that I've had to face since setting up TEFL Equity Advocates 2 years ago is from people who tell me, look, things will never change. You're just fighting a lost cause. I think there's a certain defeatism in that. But remember, we as English teachers, together, we are ELT. And we have the power to change it, to shape its future. So, some of the most beautiful comments that I've heard since setting up TEFL Equity Advocates 2 years ago have been from people who said things like, thanks for giving me the tools and the courage to speak out for my own rights. Thanks, because do you know what? I used to accept this discrimination as a given, but now I know I shouldn't, and I won't. This is what I call empowerment and a call to action. So, if equal employment and professional opportunities for all of us is something that concerns you, then do something about it. Write an article or a blog post. Talk to your director of studies. Suggest or give a workshop on the topic. Give a conference talk or a webinar. Talk to your local teaching association. And if you see a job ad that's discriminatory, comment on it. Write to the employer. And last but not least, talk to your students. As I'll try to show later on today in my session with the learners, I think the native and non-native speaker debate is a great topic for debate and discussion with students. And I think we, as teachers, we have the obligation and the responsibility to educate our students, to empower them.
So I want to finish by making a reference to what Laura Patsker said earlier on. English has changed. It doesn't belong to the English anymore. Neither does it belong to the Americans, the Irish, or the Aussies. It belongs to all of us, all those who teach it, all those who study it, who use it. English is an international language, and a beautifully diverse one. So let's embrace this diversity. Let's speak out for greater equality in ELT, for greater professionalism, for empowerment. Let's speak out for us, for English teachers.